Welcome viewers to a special segment called Global Lens, where we get you top stories from around the globe. Now starting with the disturbing news that's coming to light from the United States. 2 people have been killed and 8 have been critically wounded at a mass shooting incident that took place at Brown University, the prestigious Ivy League school in Rhode Island. Now, according to the mayor, Brett Smiley, police are still searching for the shooter who struck at Brown's Barrison Holly Engineering building, where exams were taking place at the time. So, viewers, this is a breaking news we are getting you at this moment, and details are still coming in. So, at this moment, the latest that we know is that the shooter is still at large and manhunt is still underway. Now, officials at a news conference also said that police were looking for a male dressed in black. Now, the mayor also said officials could not yet disclose details about the victim, including whether they were students. In fact, the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, and other U.S. federal officials were also on the scene. Remember, we're getting you visuals from the university as well. Officials suspect they've clearly said that at this moment there are no suspects in custody, which means the hunt is still on for the shooter. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump said that he had been briefed on the situation, which he called terrible. Listen in as to what the reaction has come in from the U.S. President.
I've been fully briefed on the Brown University situation, what a terrible thing it is. And all we can do right now is pray for the victims and for those that were very badly hurt, it looks like. And we'll inform you later as to what's happening, but it's a shame. It's a shame.
Today is a day that the city of Providence and the state of Rhode Island prayed would never come. We've heard about horrific acts of gun violence and active shooter situations in other places, but not here. But this afternoon at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we received a call. 4:05 was when the initial call came in to Brown University of a report of an active shooter. I can confirm that there are 2 individuals who have died this afternoon, and there are another 8 in critical status, those stable, at Rhode Island Hospital. Those are the only injuries or casualties that we know at this time.
All right, so that's the latest reports we're getting of a mass shooting incident that has been reported from the Brown University in the United States. Remember, this university is located at the Rhode Island, and it's in fact a rare incident to take place in this area. However, one does know that the U.S. suffers from the problem of gun violence, which seems to be increasingly now entering its educational spaces. From schools to universities, incidents of mass shooting have now become really common in the United States. In fact, several leaders, including Democrats, have tried to bring in gun laws in the country, but the arms lobby in the U.S. is pretty strong, with a lot of Republican leaders also backing it. The latest incident now being reported at the Brown University. And now viewers, moving on, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has now freed 123 prisoners, including Nobel Peace Prize winner Ales Bialyatsky and prominent opposition leader Maria Kalashnikova. Now, this comes following talks with the U.S. envoy, according to Washington. And in return, the U.S. has now agreed to lift sanctions on Belarusian potash, a key fertilizer ingredient and one of the country's major exports. In fact, the move marks the largest prisoner release by Lukashenko since his government opened the dialogue this year with the Trump administration. Remember, Western governments had long shunned Lukashenko over his violent crackdown on dissent after the disputed 2020 election and his support for Russia's war in Ukraine. In fact, now in this prisoner release, among those freed are Bialatsky, jailed since 2021 for his human rights work, and Viktor, who was also detained while preparing to challenge Lukashenko politically. U.S. officials say that the engagement right now is aimed at reducing Belarus's dependence on Russian president, though Belarusian opposition remains deeply skeptical.
Freed prisoners, including Nobel Peace Prize winner Alice Bialiatski, were greeted at the U.S. Embassy in Lithuania's capital on Saturday. The hugs and handshakes came after Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko freed 123 prisoners, following talks with an envoy for President Donald Trump. In return, the United States agreed to lift sanctions on Belarusian potash, a key component in fertilizers. The prisoner release was by far the biggest by Lukashenko, a close ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin, since Trump's administration opened talks this year. Nobel winner Bialiatski is a human rights campaigner who fought for years on behalf of political prisoners before becoming one himself. He had been in jail since July 2021. On Saturday, Bialiatski told reporters, quote, "Being released means meeting with family, meeting with friends, and continuing my work as a human rights defender." Other freed prisoners included opposition figure Maria Kolesnikova. She was the leader of mass protests against Lukashenko in 2020. And Viktor Babarika, who was arrested in 2020 while preparing to run against Lukashenko in an election. More than 100 of the released prisoners were taken to Ukraine, according to Kyiv's POW Coordination Center, who said the group included Ukrainian citizens accused of working for Ukrainian intelligence and Belarusian political prisoners. U.S. officials have told Reuters that engaging with Lukashenko is part of an effort to peel him away from Putin's influence, at least to a degree. Here's Trump's envoy, John Cole.
I think that President Lukashenko, who should get a tremendous amount of credit for this, I think that he is moving. He wants a more normalized relationship with the United States and the West. So we're moving in that direction.
The U.S. and European Union imposed wide-ranging sanctions on Belarus after Minsk launched a violent crackdown on protesters following a disputed election in 2020, jailing nearly all opponents of Lukashenko who did not flee abroad. Sanctions were tightened after Lukashenko allowed Belarus to serve as a staging ground for Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022.
And now, viewers, a new controversy has emerged in the Jeffrey Epstein case. Democrats on the U.S. Congressional Oversight Panel have now released more than a dozen previously unseen photographs that include photos of President Donald Trump and former President Bill Clinton as well. Take a look at these latest revelations.
Donald Trump appeared in newly released images from the estate of Jeffrey Epstein from before his time in office, part of more than a dozen photos released Friday by Democrats on a congressional oversight panel. In one, Trump is seen smiling with several women whose faces are redacted. A second shows him standing beside Epstein. A third shows him seated alongside another redacted woman with his tie loosened. The House Oversight Committee Democrats say they are reviewing more than 95,000 images produced by the estate of Jeffrey Epstein, who was a convicted sex offender before his death. Democrats said the tens of thousands of photos include what they call images of the wealthy and powerful men who spent time with Jeffrey Epstein, and that more will be released in the coming days. Former President Bill Clinton, Trump aide Steve Bannon, Bill Gates, and former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers appear in some images. Filmmaker Woody Allen also appears in multiple photographs, and billionaire entrepreneur Richard Branson appears in one. Other pictures feature sex toys as well as a $4.50 Trump condom with the president's face on it. A spokesperson for the committee, which is led by Republican Chairman James Comer of Kentucky, said Democrats were, quote, cherry-picking photos and making targeted redactions to create a false narrative about President Trump. The congressional Democrats said they redacted the women's faces to protect the identity of Epstein's victims. White House spokeswoman Abigail Jackson said Trump's administration has done more for Epstein's victims than Democrats ever have. Trump and Epstein were friends during the 90s and early 2000s, but Trump says he broke off ties before Epstein pleaded guilty to prostitution charges. The president has also consistently denied knowing about Epstein's abuse and sex trafficking, of underage girls.